You ever walk into a room and feel like you just punched everyone in the gut just by existing? That's what happened. The second I stepped onto the patio of the Dalton family's country club estate, the conversation died mid-sentence. A fork dropped. Someone gasped. The champagne fizzled in its glass like it was holding its breath. I wasn't supposed to be there. Hell, I wasn't supposed to be anywhere. As far as this family was concerned, I was a ghost with no right to haunt their fairy tale lives. My mother's laugh cracked like glass as she turned toward me, still holding her flute mid-air, her smile frozen in place. My older brother, Damon, looked at me like I'd clawed my way out of a grave, and in a way I had. I took one step forward. My boots echoed sharply against the stone tiles. The sound sliced through the silence like a blade. Aunt Lydia's eyes widened, but not in horror. No, recognition. She knew. She had always known. I let the moment stretch, let their panic bloom across their faces. My mother finally found her voice. "Isla?" She said my name like it was a curse and a prayer rolled into one. Like saying it out loud might somehow make me disappear again. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You told them I ran away." There was a sound, someone gasping, the clink of glass shattering, a baby crying in the background. And just like that, the party turned into a crime scene. I scanned the crowd, all those polite masks, all those people who had looked the other way when I disappeared. And then my gaze locked on him, my father, Adam Dalton, standing by the fireplace with a whiskey in hand, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap off. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at me like I was the problem, like I'd ruined everything by existing. You want to know what happened? What really happened? Okay, let me tell you. Before the silence, before the whispers and the lies, there was a kitchen that always smelled like lemon-scented bleach and quiet desperation. Sunday mornings meant spotless counters and my mother scrubbing everything like her soul was on the line. "No one wants to come into a messy home, Isla," she used to say. No one ever came. She had a voice like cold steel. "You're so dramatic. Do you think your attitude helps this family?" Didn't matter what I was doing, breathing, blinking, existing, I was always too much or not enough. My dad? A fixture behind the newspaper. I don't even know if he read it. Maybe he just liked having a wall between us. Then there was Damon, the golden child, quarterback, honor roll, family darling. He could crash the car into the garage, and Mom would bake brownies and call it a learning moment. Me? I missed curfew by 15 minutes, and I was a failure. At 20, I was juggling community college classes and pulling graveyard shifts at the diner off Route 17. By 2 a.m., I was dragging myself home and still catching hell if I left my shoes by the door. But the night everything changed? That started with a burned grilled cheese and ended with a slap. "You're not going to waste your life waiting tables like some nobody," my mother hissed, her voice sharp as broken glass. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my coat. My hand shook as I zipped it up. "I just need some air," I muttered. The air was crisp, quiet, empty streets and that soft hum of power lines. My breath fogged up the night. I only meant to walk around the block, just enough time to clear my head. I didn't know that would be the last time I saw that house for nearly a year. I remember the cold, the way it soaked through my jeans and sneakers, the buzz of a flickering street lamp overhead, the smell of asphalt and cinnamon toast faint, like a memory trying to claw its way back. I turned the corner past the old gas station. That's when I saw the headlights. Too fast, too close, too late. There was no sound, just white-hot impact. My body lifted off the ground, then nothing, darkness. When I came to, everything felt wrong. The ceiling was too white, the sheets scratchy and stiff. A monitor beeped steadily beside me. "Hey," a nurse whispered, gentle but cautious. "You're safe. You're at Ridgewood General. You've been out for a while." I opened my mouth to speak, but it felt like I'd swallowed gravel. I couldn't even ask her what happened. "Hit and run," she said, reading the panic in my eyes. "You didn't have any ID. You've been here for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Someone should have come by then, right?" But no one had. No family, no friends, no calls, not even a bouquet of pity flowers. There had been a line in the local paper, "Young woman found unconscious." No identification. That young woman was me. And no one had answered. Worse, I didn't even know my own name. They said it was retrograde amnesia head trauma. The memories would come back, they promised. So I waited. I learned how to walk again, eat again, speak in full sentences again. The nurses called me Jane. But I wasn't Jane, I was Isla. And I was beginning to remember. It started with a song, Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, playing quietly on the ancient TV above my bed. One of the nurses hummed along, off-key but soothing, and suddenly I was back, in a kitchen. A slap, a scream, a slammed door, the cold. More came after that, flashes like lightning strikes. The porch light, the smell of lemon cleaner, Damon's varsity hoodie, his face behind the wheel, and the sound of my father's voice. She shouldn't have been out there anyway. Each memory cracked open a little more of me. Until one night it all came rushing back. Damon had been drinking. Mom had given him the keys. He hit me, and they covered it up, said I'd run away. I wish I could tell you that remembering everything was like flipping on a light switch. Clean, instant, comforting. It wasn't. It felt like drowning, like being dragged backward through fire. Every night, more came back. Not just the accident. Everything that led up to it. The diner grease clinging to my skin after shifts. My mother's cutting remarks. The way Damon had stumbled down the stairs that night, laughing with a beer still in his hand. He said he was fine. She believed him. She gave him the keys. And me? I was just in the way. There's this moment in trauma recovery. No one talks about the second you realize you weren't forgotten by accident. You were erased. The nurses tried again to reach my family. It had been nearly a month. I could walk, talk, remember enough to say my name. Isla Dalton, 20, supposed to be dead. A social worker dialed the number listed under my emergency contact. I sat on the hospital bed, knees pulled to my chest, watching her face as she waited. She frowned. Her eyes hardened. When she hung up, she looked at me like she didn't know what to say. "They said you ran away," she said softly. "That you were unstable. That they don't want contact. Unstable. No contact." I stared at her. "Could you repeat that?" She nodded. "They said, they're not interested in reopening that door." That was the moment something inside me cracked, but not in a way that broke me. It opened me. They never reported me missing. Never called local hospitals. Never checked the obituary section just in case. No one looked. No one asked. Not even my mother. Later, I learned how deep the lie ran. Aunt Lydia told me during a quiet afternoon visit, when I was starting to look like myself again. She sat by the window, her face pale but determined. "They said you left barefoot." After a breakdown, she whispered, "Said you screamed something about being cursed and ran into the night." They acted like it was this. Tragic family shame. I stared at her. Did anyone question it? She shook her head. Everyone believed them. The crying, the vague answers. Damon even gave a speech at a church vigil. I laughed. Sharp. Hollow. A vigil. For me. While I was hooked up to machines, learning how to hold a spoon again, they didn't grieve me. They scrubbed me out of the picture, literally. Lydia showed me a family photo taken at the lake house 3 weeks after the accident. My favorite place in the world, a place I wasn't even allowed to mention without setting off my mother's fuse. There they were, laughing, sun-kissed, alive. Damon with his arm around our father, my mother in white like some kind of grieving angel turned influencer. No trace of me, no sadness in their eyes. They looked lighter, free. I should have cried, I should have raged, but I didn't. Because in that moment, I understood something most people never do. Sometimes, people aren't scared of losing you. They're scared of what you remember. I stayed with Lydia after I left the hospital. She didn't ask for anything, just made space, bought me soft towels, cooked things I liked, but never said no if I asked to eat cereal for dinner instead. She let me breathe. "Stay as long as you need," she said one night, handing me a mug of chamomile. "You're not a ghost here." I think I cried for the first time that night, not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. Not the broken version, not the drama, not the headline, just me, Isla. And still, I couldn't shake it. The questions. Why did they cover it up? Why pretend I ran? Why hide Damon's role? The pieces didn't just fall into place. I forced them in. I combed through old messages, news clippings, my mom's social media posts. The narrative they built was masterful. Devastated by Isla's mental health struggles. We hope she finds peace. Prayers for our broken family. Damon posted a photo of us at Halloween when I was 12. Caption, "Miss you, little sis." Comments flooded in. "You were such a good brother. She'll come back when she's ready." But I hadn't gone anywhere. I'd been left, discarded, labeled inconvenient. And what haunted me most? They weren't panicking. They weren't hiding. They were thriving. That meant they felt safe. Safe from consequences. Safe from truth. Safe from me. That's when I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to send a letter. Wasn't going to make a dramatic phone call. I was going to show up. Let them see what survival looks like. Let them hear what guilt sounds like when it finally has a face again. I bided my time, got stronger, brushed up my makeup, dyed my hair back to its natural shade. I didn't want to look different. I wanted to look familiar, unavoidable. When Lydia handed me the invitation, I didn't even blink. Damon's engagement party, of course. Linen dress code, fairy lights, string quartet, the usual Dalton drama cloaked in perfection. "Are you sure?" Lydia asked. I nodded. "I'm not going for closure." "Then why?" I looked her dead in the eye. "For clarity." The day of the party, I dressed carefully, not to impress, to unsettle. The same jacket I'd worn the night of the accident, cleaned, pressed, symbolic. I stood at the edge of the patio, heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. Then I stepped forward. One step, then another. People turned, whispered, froze. And just like that, the silence returned. It wrapped around the party like a noose. Then Damon turned. His smile died on his lips. Our eyes met. He paled. His fiancée touched his arm, confused. "Who is that?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Because he knew. And suddenly, so did everyone else. I didn't rush. I walked through that crowd like I belonged there because I did. Every stare, every gasp, every uncomfortable shuffle, I felt all of it. Let them feel it too. Let them sit in it. The weight of their silence, the echo of their lies. My boots tapped against the flagstone as I stepped into the middle of the patio. The music had cut off mid-note. All that remained was the nervous shifting of guests and the occasional clink of glass. Damon still hadn't moved. He looked like he wanted to vanish. Like if he closed his eyes hard enough, maybe I'd disappear again. But I wasn't going anywhere. My mother finally broke the silence. "You look well," she said, her voice brittle, like she'd practiced it in the mirror a dozen times. I tilted my head. "Is that what we're starting with?" A woman near the dessert table gasped quietly. My father, always the strategist, stepped forward. "Isla," he said, his voice steady, trying to reel it in. "This isn't the time or the place." I smiled. "No, Dad. It's exactly the time. And it's definitely the place." Then I turned to the crowd, raised my voice just enough to carry, not a shout, just firm, clear, like testimony in a courtroom. "They told you I ran away." The weight of that sentence landed like a dropped stone in still water. Ripples spread, people stiffened, but that's not what happened. My fingers curled slightly, not from fear, but restraint. My heart pounded, but my voice held. I didn't leave because I was unstable, or emotional, or dramatic. I was hit by a car. Gasps. A murmur rolled through the guests like thunder building in the distance. "A hit and run," I continued. "Late at night. No ID. In the hospital for weeks. With no name. While they," I gestured toward my parents, "told the world I just disappeared." Damon finally found his voice. "You don't know what you're saying." I looked him dead in the eyes. "I remember your face behind the wheel." The world stopped turning. Even the wind seemed to hush. It was a strange moment watching the truth crack through people's faces, like watching a painting peel to reveal something grotesque underneath. I saw someone's wine glass slip from their hand. Red spilled down white linen like blood in snow. "You were drunk, Damon," I said, quieter now. "At that party. Everyone saw. You stumbled down the front steps. You shouldn't have been driving. But you did. And you saw me." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. And that's when I reached into my coat pocket. I didn't come with just memories. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Would you like to hear how a cover-up sounds? I hit play. The voicemail echoed through the patio, loud and damning. My father's voice, slurred, panicked. She's gone. You need to keep your mouth shut. You were drinking, and I can't protect you if this gets out. The gasp this time wasn't quiet. It came like a wave. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My mother clutched her pearls, literally, like she could string together a prayer fast enough to undo this. You knew, I said to her, and you still told everyone I chose to disappear. You erased me. You buried me under your reputation. No one moved, until June, sweet, quiet Aunt June stepped out of the crowd and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's telling the truth." All eyes snapped to her. She didn't flinch. "I tried to ask questions," she said. "They shut me down, told me I was stirring things up. But I knew something wasn't right." She walked over, stood beside me, and faced the family she'd spent her whole life trying to keep peace with. Don't let their money, their nice clothes, or their fake smiles fool you. They didn't lose Isla. They threw her away. Everything unraveled after that. Guests started whispering, not behind hands anymore. People walked out, one by one, then in groups. A few lingered watching, waiting for the next twist. My mother sat down hard in one of the chairs, her face pale. My father looked around like a man watching a kingdom fall. Damon? He just stared at the ground. I was supposed to stay silent, I said, turning back to them. That's what you counted on. But I didn't die. I remember every word, every moment, and now everyone else does too. I didn't need applause or validation. The silence they gave me now wasn't power, it was fear. And this time, it belonged to them. The fallout started within hours. That voicemail? It didn't stay on my phone. It got forwarded, sent to old teachers, former church friends, a local journalist I went to school with. By the next morning, it was viral. Local news ran it with the headline, "Prominent family accused of covering up daughter's hit and run." The article didn't hold back. Damon's coaching job gone. Turns out, schools don't love hiring potential felons with open investigations. My father? Under review for obstruction. The city board released a statement, cold, distant. The kind you release when someone's being quietly disowned. My mother tried to host another prayer vigil. This time, no one came. Damon left a voicemail. "You got what you wanted," he said, voice cracking. "You destroyed us." But that's the thing. I didn't destroy them. They did. I just stopped pretending it didn't happen. A week later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name. Inside, a single torn notebook paper. "I should have protected you, Dad." Folded around a check with too many zeros to count. I didn't cash it. I framed the note. Not because it made me feel better, but because even cowards leave evidence when they lose. I didn't reply to Damon's voicemail. What was there to say? They weren't destroyed because I spoke. They were exposed because they lied. All I did was pull back the curtain. The rest, well, the fire was theirs. I just let people see the smoke. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was walking on glass. No eggshells underfoot. No second-guessing every word I said, every look I gave, every truth I carried like a secret. I was free. And that kind of freedom? It doesn't come wrapped in a bow, it's raw, messy, quiet, like learning how to breathe again. I left town 3 days after the voicemail hit the news. No press conference. No dramatic goodbye. Just a packed duffel, Lydia's teary hug, and a bus ticket with no return date. She offered to drive me. I told her I needed the solitude. She understood. She always did. "I'm proud of you," she said as I stepped onto the bus. "Not for surviving, for refusing to be silenced." The door shut behind me with a soft hiss. The kind that feels like a page turning. I moved 3 states away. Rented a tiny walk-up over a used bookstore that smelled like old paper and fresh coffee. It creaked when I walked too fast, and the plumbing groaned at night like it was haunted, but it was mine. No framed photos on the mantle, no heirloom dishes, just books, quiet. And the sound of my own breathing. I got a job shelving inventory, started taking online classes again. I told my new boss my name was Isla Ray, not Dalton, just Ray, clean, sharp, simple. No one here knew my history. No one looked at me like I was a warning or a mystery. Here, I was just a woman trying to start over. Sometimes people ask if revenge feels good. They expect fireworks, a grand finale, the villain in handcuffs, the hero in heels walking away from the flames. But that's not real life. In real life, revenge feels like silence. Not the empty kind, the full. The kind where no one's yelling, where your phone isn't vibrating with lies, where you can walk down a street and not brace for impact. That's silence, that's peace. And peace is loud when you've never had it before. The press didn't let the story go. They did follow-ups, opinion pieces, interviews with anonymous sources. Someone leaked my high school yearbook photo. Another article quoted a teacher who said, "I always seemed like she carried something heavy." I didn't answer their calls. I didn't need to. My story was out there. It wasn't just mine anymore. It had roots, reached strangers. People the first never meet messaged Lydia, sent flowers to the diner where I used to work. Someone even mailed a note to the bookstore, no return address, just 5 words. "You weren't invisible. We saw." I kept that note, pressed between 2 books on the shelf I dusted every Tuesday. But healing? That part wasn't viral. It was slow. Sometimes I still woke up from dreams where headlights flashed and my body jolted. Sometimes I flinched when I heard glass shatter in the cafe downstairs. Sometimes I looked at my reflection too long, trying to match this new woman to the girl who walked into the dark all those months ago. And sometimes I didn't recognize either of them, but I never once wished to go back, not even a little. Lydia wrote to me often, handwritten postcards with ink that always smeared in the corners. She never wrote long paragraphs, just quick notes. The dog finally stopped peeing on the rug. "Found your old hoodie. Still smells like diner fries. I told your mom to choke on her fake tears. Felt amazing." I laughed out loud every time, because for the first time, laughter didn't come with guilt. Damon tried to reach out again, this time an email. The subject line was just my name. No hi, no sorry, just "you destroyed everything." Underneath it, one sentence: "You have no idea what you've done." I didn't reply, but I did reread it, because buried in that bitterness was something that tasted like fear. Not fear of me, fear of truth, of being seen, of being known for what he was when no one was watching. That was the thing about people like Damon. They were always fine until someone turned on the lights. The bookstore owner, Marla, didn't know anything about my past. She just liked that I was organized, quiet, and showed up on time. She gave me extra shifts, taught me how to fix the label printer when it jammed, let me eat lunch in the stockroom without asking questions. "You're a calm one," she said once. I almost laughed. If only she knew. But I think maybe she did. Some people recognize storms even after they've passed. One day, I found a box of old journals in the back. Water damaged, smelled like mildew. Most of them were too ruined to sell. Marla told me to toss them. I didn't. I brought them upstairs, dried them page by page on my windowsill. Some were blank, some filled with strangers' scribbles, recipes, poems, pressed leaves. One had a single sentence scrawled on the first page: "If no one listens, write it anyway." I copied it onto the first page of a new journal, my own. Sometimes I still check the news, old habit. I scroll past stories about the Daltons now, the local school board's investigation into Damon's hiring, my father's temporary leave from civic council work, my mother's latest plea for restoring the family's dignity, and always the comments. Most people don't even remember my name anymore, just the scandal, the cover-up, the voicemail, which is fine because my name isn't theirs to use anymore. It belongs to me. I tell this story now not for sympathy, not even for closure. I tell it because silence is contagious, and I was quiet for too long. These words, this life, this is the after. It's what comes when the dust settles and the lies rot out and truth stands alone in the clearing, not needing applause, just space to breathe. It took time before I realized I didn't flinch at my own name anymore, Isla Ray. It rolled off my tongue softer now, without shame, without apology. Not like a label, not like a warning, just mine. There's something sacred about being forgotten. You get to start over with no expectations, no narratives shoved into your skin, no legacy weighing down your back like a wet coat. Starting from nothing gave me everything. My world was small, but it was real. Morning light pouring through the bookstore window. The smell of roasted beans from the cafe next door. The quiet tap of fingers on a register as I rang up paperbacks with bent corners and cracked spines. Most days I worked the morning shift and walked home through back alleys lined with ivy. I'd grab fruit from the vendor on 6th Street. He always slipped an extra apple in my bag. "You look like someone who needs a win." He'd wink. He didn't know how right he was. I got used to quiet evenings. Sometimes I journaled. Sometimes I just sat by the window, watching the world hum along without me. A girl once looked up at my apartment from the street. We locked eyes. She smiled and waved. She didn't know who I was, and I didn't need her to. That was the beauty of it. I wasn't Isla the missing girl, or Isla the scandal. I was just someone who'd survived. And there's something quietly powerful about being unremarkable after you've been turned into a ghost. But healing, I learned, isn't a straight line. It loops, doubles back, surprises you on an idle Tuesday with a song or a scent or a stranger's face that looks just a little too familiar. I was reorganizing the fiction shelf one afternoon, alphabetizing Faulkner, when the bell above the bookstore door chimed. A voice followed it, crisp, polished, a little too smooth. "Excuse me, do you carry biographies?" I turned and stopped breathing. It was her, my mother. She looked the same. A little older, maybe. A little paler, but still perfectly put together, nails done, coat cinched just right. Like she'd practiced this moment in a mirror she refused to admit she owned. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? To her, I'd frozen in time. I was supposed to still be 20, broken, erased, not here, not standing, not working a job, not wearing a name tag that said Ray. "Biographies are in the back," I said, voice steady. She blinked, paused, then squinted, like her brain was trying to catch up to her eyes. "Isla?" I didn't answer. Not right away. I let her say it again. "Isla?" And there it was, that flicker, the shift from confusion to panic. To her, I was supposed to be a ghost, a chapter she'd torn out and buried. But ghosts don't run bookstores. Ghosts don't wear smiles that aren't forced. "What are you doing here?" she asked, too loudly. "This is my job," I said, cool, simple. You work here?" "Yeah." "And this is your life now?" I shrugged. Peaceful. She stared at me like she couldn't make the pieces fit. Like the version of me standing in front of her wasn't compatible with the story she'd told. "You didn't answer my emails," she said after a beat. "You lied to the world," I replied. "I figured we were even." She looked away, bit her lip. I saw her throat move when she swallowed. "I made mistakes. I let that hang in the air." "Which one are we talking about?" I asked. "Covering up a hit and run? Lying to your friends? Erasing your daughter? Or the one where you tried to play the grieving mother when I was still in a coma?" Her face crumpled slightly, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Only sadness. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, tried to hand it to me. "I wrote you a letter. I didn't take it. You should have written a report, a police report, a missing persons form, anything." "I was scared," she whispered. "No," I said. "You were embarrassed. There's a difference between guilt and regret. Guilt asks to be forgiven. Regret just wants to be seen." She didn't come for me because she missed me. She came because her reflection cracked, and she needed me to help her glue it back together. But I wasn't in the business of fixing broken mirrors. "Not anymore. I'm not angry," I told her calmly. "But I'm also not yours to hurt again." She nodded slowly. Maybe for the first time in her life, she heard someone say no and didn't push back. "Do you need anything?" she asked, quieter now, like it was her last attempt to stay tethered. "Yeah," I said. "I need you to leave." And she did. The door chimed behind her like punctuation. I stood there after she left, one hand resting on the edge of the counter, the other over my chest, like I was trying to keep something from spilling out. But it didn't. It stayed inside, calm, firm, whole. Marla walked out from the back, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Friend of yours?" "Not quite." She didn't press, just nodded and handed me a cup of coffee. That night, I walked to the overlook behind my apartment building. It was quiet, just the hush of wind through branches, and the city lights flickering like fireflies in the distance. I thought about that envelope, The letter I hadn't opened. I lit a match, watched it burn. I didn't need more words from people who only wanted to rewrite the past. I had my own pages now, and they weren't written in shame. They were written in firelight and new names, and the kind of silence that doesn't echo. The next day, I rearranged the bookstore window display, stacked a few titles I loved, ones about survival, reinvention, women who ran away not because they were broken, but because they were tired of pretending to be whole for people who never saw the cracks. I slid my favorite journal onto the corner shelf, a sticky note on the front: "If you've been made small, I hope you find your way back to big." Sometimes someone would stop, read it, pick up a book, nod like they understood. Maybe they did. Maybe they were trying to remember themselves, too. Sometimes I stand in the back of the bookstore when it's quiet and watch people browse. They pick up paperbacks with torn covers, flip through old travel guides, sometimes read the first page and decide it's worth taking home. I think about how we do that with people, too. We meet them halfway through their story, judge them by a few lines, maybe a chapter, rarely ask how many pages came before the ones they show us, rarely ask what got them here in the first place. I still get emails sometimes, from old classmates, curious people, strangers who heard the story secondhand and want to know what really happened. I don't answer, not because I'm hiding, but because the truth doesn't belong to them. It's not gossip, it's not clickbait, it's mine. I lived it, I burned in it, I rebuilt from its ash. And honestly, I don't owe it to anyone. Lydia visited last spring. She brought lemon bars in a foil tin and cried when she saw my apartment. Said it looked like something out of a second chance novel. She stayed 3 days. We didn't talk much about the past. We didn't need to. It hung there between us, but not heavy anymore, just something acknowledged. We ate breakfast on the fire escape, legs swinging over the ledge like teenagers again. She held my hand and told me she was proud. And for the first time in my life, I believed someone when they said it. A few months later, I started writing a column, nothing fancy. Just a quiet little weekly piece for a digital paper. Essays on starting over, walking away, the strange comfort of being ordinary after being something tragic. I didn't use my full name, but it didn't matter. People found the words, they always do. One letter came from a girl named Celine, 17. Said she'd read one of my pieces and cried in the school library. Said she'd just left home after being told she was too much and too sensitive, and that maybe it wasn't her who needed fixing. "I don't know who you are," she wrote, "but you made me feel like I'm not crazy. Thank you for that." I wrote her back. Just one line: "You're not crazy, you're unmuting." Not long after, I started hosting a little writing group out of the shop, just Sunday afternoons. Mostly women, some young, some older. One man who always wrote in third person, but cried when he read aloud. We didn't call it therapy, but we all knew it was. People shared things they'd never said before. Losses, loves, whole lives tucked into journal pages. You could feel the air shift every time someone found the right words for something they'd been carrying too long. We didn't judge, we didn't fix, we witnessed. And sometimes that's all anyone needs. One day after group, I stayed behind to clean up. A girl I'd seen before but hadn't spoken to came up to me. She looked nervous, said she recognized me. Not from the store, not from the articles, but from before. "I went to your high school," she said. "I remember when you vanished. I didn't speak. I let her keep going. They said you ran away, that you were unstable, that you'd always been a little off." She paused. Her voice broke slightly. I believed them. "I'm sorry," I nodded. "It's okay. It's not," she said. "But thank you anyway." It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about understanding how easy it is for people to believe the loudest voice in the room, especially when it wears pearls and a smile and cries on cue. But truth? Truth has its own frequency, and eventually it rings louder than anything else. Damon never reached out again. Not after the email. Not after the voicemail made national headlines. His name still popped up now and then. In local stories, job applications declined. Positions passed over. I never wished him harm. I just wanted him to feel the weight of what he did. And I think, in his own quiet way, he does. That's enough. My mother sent one last letter, this time typed, polished, signed with her full name like she was writing a business contract. She didn't say sorry. She said she hoped I was well, that she trusted I was making something of myself. I didn't respond. Because the girl she buried, she did more than make something of herself. She became, not to prove anything, not for applause, but because she chose to. I still keep that picture. The old family photo. Me at 12. Damon beside me. My mother's tight-lipped smile. My father's stiff posture. The edges are burned now, a little warped, not out of bitterness, but to remind myself it was real, that I didn't imagine it, that I came from that but didn't end there. I put it behind my bookshelf, not on display, but close enough to remember, not for the pain, for the truth. Sometimes at night, I write letters I don't send, to the girl I used to be, to the nurse who held my hand when I couldn't speak, to Lydia, even though she's still here and we talk every week. To all the versions of me that got me here, I write to say thank you. Because survival isn't about escaping pain, it's about carrying it the right way, turning it into something lighter, something worth holding. I don't dream of revenge anymore. I dream of gardens, of bookshelves that reach the ceiling, of voices laughing in my kitchen, of quiet mornings and new names, and a life that doesn't need to be defended. I dream of being known, not for what happened to me, but for what I did with it. And that's the real legacy. My name is Isla Ray, not the girl who disappeared, not the sister erased, not the scandal whispered about in church basements. I'm here, I'm living, and I remember everything, not because it broke me, but because it built me. Story 2, I was given a funeral. My mom wept, yet she didn't cry a tear. In agony, my sister read a eulogy I wrote as though it were her own. They believed I had vanished forever. However, the church doors opened and I entered alive as my favorite song was performed on the piano. I was constantly aware that I didn't fit in. I sensed it even as a little child, the way my mother treated Emily as though she were a piece of glass, and me as though I were the fracture that broke it. Everyone wanted Emily as a daughter because of her easy charm and lovely hair. The other one was me, the too sensitive one, the silent one. The person who wept inappropriately and asked too many questions. Dad said very little. He didn't. Mom's savage tongue was worse than his quiet. It seemed more empty, as if I were completely non-existent. Being raised in the Morgan home meant that everyone was always comparing smiles, posture, attire, and academics. Emily always prevailed. She had a knack for winning. And without doing a thing, she was able to defeat me. She would chuckle just loud enough for me to hear, say something to her mother in private, and leave me wondering what I had done wrong once more. I had given up attempting to get noticed by the time I was 28. I left home. I stopped attending birthday celebrations and family holidays. Perhaps the distance might reset something, I reasoned. They could miss me. They did not make a call. Ceased. No one responded to the messages. That year, I didn't even have a happy Christmas. When I sent a present to Grandma, Emily joked about it online and wrote a story about it, calling it a strange, anonymous package. I don't want to confess how much that hurt, so I simply left one day. I purchased a one-way ticket and packed my bags to leave Ashridge. No explanation, no farewell, no letter. I didn't want to be pursued by them. I was curious about what they would do in my absence. They took no action. Weeks went by. Months followed by a year. I began anew. I had counseling. I even changed my name for a period, as well as my hairstyle and phone number. I believed I was getting better. I believed I was losing my memory. As a matter of fact, though, you never forget what it's like to be regarded like a ghost that is still alive. My college closest friend Lena called me 3 years later, the only person with whom I had maintained contact, Claire. Her voice was tight with a mixture of anger and incredulity as she spoke. Your household? You are being given a funeral. It was weird, not hilarious, which is why I laughed. Like seeing the unfolding of another person's life in real time. An obituary that was posted on Emily's profile was the link that she forwarded to me. My name. Born on April 17th, my photo subject, Claire Elizabeth Morgan, passed away overseas. Missed by more, loved by many. Who actually is loved? I read the comments and scrolled. In high school, she sent prayers to the family and was very sweet. Peace be with you, lovely soul. Mom even posted something. Despite all of her hardships, we always loved Claire. She is now at peace, calm. They didn't even call. I was never reported missing, never made an effort to get in touch, even with Lena. They wanted to say they loved me now. I didn't get upset. Not quite yet. I felt empty, but as soon as I saw where the funeral was being held, Church of St. Elora, this Sunday around 10 a.m., a peculiar peace fell over me. They wanted me gone. They wanted a version of the tale they could control. They wanted to read my obituary, weep crocodile tears, and walk away with the pure memory of a girl they opted to delete. All right, let them have it. Let them bury the spirit of Claire Morgan. I'll be there to make sure she doesn't remain dead. I arrived at Ashridge 2 days before the funeral. I wore a dark cap, sunglasses, and an enormous coat. The type of disguise you'd think was overly theatrical in real life until you remembered that in tiny communities, your face is the news. And mine had just been splashed on every television as the cherished daughter taken too soon. The Pine Grove Inn hadn't altered. Still smelt like lavender and ancient wood. I rented a room using Lena's last name, paid in cash. I wasn't prepared for attention. Not quite yet. Over the course of the following day, I observed everything as if I were a spectator at my own trial. Emily had overreacted on the internet. She shared a carousel of pictures of us as kids, cropped in half, with her in the middle and myself to the side. I lost my sister, my best friend, the post said. Nothing will ever be the same in life. Claire, you can relax. My coffee nearly suffocated me. Best buddy. This is from the gal who previously claimed to have fabricated my college application in front of a whole dinner party. She once grabbed credit for my high school charitable project and grinned while I sobbed in the restroom. However, there she was, standing as though it were her wedding day in front of St. Elora Church while wearing a black outfit. For example, she was the sad lead in this performance. Next was Mom's post, a basic picture of a candle burning. Claire had hardships throughout her life. However, we adored her. Every time we did, rewind. Emily poured orange juice on my laptop the night before exams. And I'm 16 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor, trembling from a panic attack. Mom is standing over me with Annie crossed. You must become more resilient. Being vulnerable does not bring rewards in life. One more flash. I'm 25. I'm requesting a little loan following a layoff. What did she say? Perhaps if you had made wiser decisions in life. I wasn't loved by them. They put up with me. Or worse. I was obliterated. Lena stopped by that evening and gave me a USB disk, you understand? She muttered. The speech is being used. I felt sick to my stomach. I was still struggling to keep things together years ago. I composed a letter, I suppose a sort of farewell, to fade away, not to perish. In case something ever occurred, I handed it to Lena. In case the story was misrepresented. Just in case they feigned concern. As it happens, they located it. Lena could have shared it once out of desperation. I didn't inquire. All I knew was that a preacher I hardly remembered would read it out loud, to a crowded group of individuals who had forgotten my existence. I got the file open. The darkness was always me. The background sounds. It was the source of all the discomfort. I may have been too much or too little, perhaps both, if I ever vanish. Remember, it was never abrupt. For years I've been fading. I gazed at the display, my grief, my words. With grave expressions and mellow music playing in the background, they would now read them, as if they had experienced a tragedy, not due to them. I was unable to look away. Emily's voice trembled when she went live that evening in a lighted room wearing a silky black silk dress. In her own way, Claire was strong but compassionate. I wish I had shown my admiration for that to her more frequently. In a flashback, I'm 22 years old and crying because my ex abandoned me after Emily informed him I was mentally unstable. Just doing you a favor, sis, she answered with a smile. Let's return to the live feed. Tears. A pause. A glance at the camera. She was my sister, my spouse. My intention was to toss the laptop. They weren't lamenting my passing. Now that I was unable to speak for myself, they were cleaning me and making me easier to swallow. I alone could. I would too. That dawn, Santa Clara stood still and silent. as if it had always been, arched windows of white stone. It was the sort of environment where everything seemed sacred, even falsehoods. Behind the thick wooden panels, I could hear muted conversations as I stood just outside the rear doors. Lena had her phone ready and was parked 3 streets away. She didn't have to record it for me. All I had to know was that someone was observing, someone who saw me, really. The ceremony had begun inside. The coffin was shut. There was nothing inside, of course, just to represent a life they had no desire to comprehend. As the eulogy unfolded like a practiced theatrical performance, I waited. Mom was crying, but it was the kind of crying where her eyes remained dry and only her voice cracked. She claimed that she struggled constantly, exactly as she typed. However, we cherished her, is wrapped in velvet. Then Emily took the microphone. She appeared to be channeling some lifetime drama as she wore thin heels and a black fascinator. Through the stained glass, I could practically see her reflection. She had a stunning appearance. She did it every time. Her heart and mouth, however, were never the same. She whispered that she was misinterpreted. However, she had a light spirit, and that's it. The pianists touched the keys with their fingers. The church was filled with a gentle, well-known tune. My all-time favorite tune. They made a call. Emily used to make fun of me for having feelings for her. Too strange, too slow, and too dramatic. The back doors of St. LRA creaked open, slowly and deliberately, like something from a nightmare or a dream, and it was time for me to push them open with one gloved hand on the worn brass handle. People turned. The pianist stopped. The rhythm of my heels clicking against the stone floor was more assured than I felt. I didn't stop, though, not for the gasps or the whispers. Grandma Agnes paled and turned her head. She slipped from the pew in a faint after her hands shook. The woman beside her let out a scream. Emily let her phone fall. It echoed like thunder and clattered to the ground. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The pastor took a step back from the podium. We were told you were gone," he stammered. I stopped halfway down the aisle, letting the light from the windows catch on the edge of my black coat. "Well," I said, voice steady, eyes locked on my mother. I was. Then I smiled. But I'm not anymore. You could feel it in the room, the way reality bent around. Shock. The way guilt rises like steam from a pot when the lid is yanked off. Nobody moved, nobody blinked. I reached into my bag and pulled out a flash drive. "Since you're already gathered to honor my memory," I said, "I thought it'd be nice to share a few things you conveniently left out." The pastor looked to my mother, confused. Judith Morgan, usually quick with words, sat frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling, hands clenched in her lap like she was trying not to crumble. Emily stood up, finally face white. "Claire, what is this?" I cocked my head. "You tell me. You've all had 3 years to write your version of the story. Now it's my turn." The projector screen behind the pulpit blinked on. Lena had accessed it remotely, just like we planned. I plugged in the drive and hit play. The screen flickered to life behind the altar, and the church fell into stunned silence. I stepped aside and let the truth speak for itself. The first video was grainy, recorded through a slightly cracked phone screen, but the voices were clear. "If we declare her legally dead, the life insurance kicks in," Emily said, her voice sharp but calm. "Are you sure it'll work?" Mom replied. "She's been gone for years. No contact. It's not like she's coming back." A gasp echoed from the back of the room. Click next. A screen recording of an email correspondence titled "Claire's Assets Breakdown" from Emily Morgan to Judith Morgan, Richard Morgan. Subject dividing Claire's things. "I'll take the apartment. Mom receives the jewels. Dad can deal with her student accounts. We may donate the remainder." Click. A scanned paper emerged, a fuzzy signature at the bottom. "Last will and testament of Claire Morgan alone. I never wrote a will." And the signature? Not even close. Click photographs of the flat I formerly lived in. Cleared out. Sold after renovation. Quick Flip was the title of the real estate agent's post. In 3 days, the inherited property sold. Click on a receipt for a bank transfer. Emily's account was credited with $112,000 under the heading Life Insurance Payout. Click. The church burst into flames. People looked aside, sobbed, and muttered. A few got up to go. The pianist's hands smothered her face. "Dear God," said a woman at the front as she shook her head. With a harsh yet clear voice, I took another step forward. "You didn't simply leave me. You took me away." At last, Mom stood up and spoke in a high-pitched voice. "Claire, we believed you were gone forever. How were we to proceed? Sit and wait interminably. There was nothing we could do." I cocked my head. "No, you had an option. You just made a mistake." Once more, the doors squeaked open. I didn't walk through this time. It was Naomi Blackwell, my lawyer. Suit pressed, stone-faced, heels clicking. 2 police in uniform followed. Naomi walked up to the pulpit as if it were her court. "We're serving arrest warrants for identity theft, fraud, and forgery under Ashridge County authorities," she said. The color faded from Judith's face. Emily took a step back and stumbled. It's not real. She's telling lies." A folder was held up by Naomi. "We have 3 years of missing persons in activity, money documents, and conversation recordings. Claire never said she was dead. Did you?" At last, Dad stood up, his fists clenched. "This family is being destroyed by you." I gave him a glance. For the first time in years, I gave him a real look. "The day you sold your daughter's name, you damaged it, as if it were a company asset." The cops came slowly. One of the officers gently blocked Emily's way as she attempted to sneak out. Judith wept aloud, now in a messy manner, in a terrified manner that no longer felt staged. From the front pew, I observed everything. I refrained from crying. I didn't yell. For the first time in a long time, I just breathed. I could feel the air in every part of me. Naomi looked across to me. "Do you still intend to file charges?" I surveyed the church where they attempted to bury my memories. Instead, I decided to rise there. "Indeed. Let them experience what it's like to be wiped," I said. I stood and got my coat as the cops started to quietly leave, while the cuffs clasped over their wrists. The stillness they left behind was louder than anything they had ever spoken to me, even as the projector screen faded to dark. Before the sirens faded behind me, I left the chapel. The rustle of evidence being gathered, the yelling of chairs, the scratching of the floor, and voices rising not in mourning but in terror. Emily's scream pierced through everything. We were set up by her. I didn't recoil. It felt different now, the brightness outdoors, clearer and sharper. My coat was slung across one arm as I stood on the stairs of St. Elora, and I felt tall for the first time in years. Whole, not bitter nor heavier. I refrained from crying. I didn't have to. They made no apologies. Naturally, they didn't. Because only those who like them and think they done anything wrong would apologize. They so completely alter reality that they are unable to look beyond their own interpretation of it. However, that was no longer my job, repairing their narratives and giving their shame a rational explanation. As soon as I entered the church, the burden vanished. I also didn't turn around. I stood in front of my own headstone later that night. Morgan, Claire Elizabeth, April 17, 1991. August 3, 2020. Too soon, a kind soul passed away. It had pink lilies all around it. The flower I disliked the most. Tucked into the stone was a laminated picture that Emily had uploaded to the internet. She only remembered to add me back in when readers questioned why the deceased sister wasn't in any of the photos. The same one where she had cropped me partly out. The back of my throat ached from the irony. In front of the grave, I knelt. This place was serene. Keep quiet. No mics, no performances. Only dirt and stone and truth. I reached inside my coat pocket and pulled out the folded piece of paper that I had written the night before the funeral, while alone in my hotel room. I read the lines aloud, smoothed the edges, and set it beneath the flowers. I returned stronger, but you buried the old me. To the girl who needed your affection, may you rest in peace. I left her there and got up. That was the me that pleaded for morsels of love, who sobbed in private, who made herself smaller in order to make others feel larger. Now she was gone. I wasn't grieving for her either. I was letting her go. The tree line weighed my automobile. The spring air brushed my skin as I got into the driver's seat, turned on the engine, and rolled down the window just enough. The legal complaint had already been launched by Naomi. The criminal charges would be handled by the state. The news stories were on the way. The repercussions were the same. I grinned when I turned into the wide road, though. Despite all of that, I grinned because I had regained my voice, which was the one thing they were most scared of. Mine is neither the most beautiful or the loudest. I drove out of Ashridge to keep going, not to go away. To begin anew, not to start over. As the lady who ensured they would never forget she existed, not as the daughter they buried. Story 3. I've been referred to be sweet, trustworthy, and too kind for my own good. However, the one that stings and sticks the most is only a caretaker. I do little things like sit next to someone's grandma while they are in a state of love and forget their own name. For example, giving a woman who is dying something other than dazzling business dealings in heels, like eating, bathing, reading, and reciting poems before bed. However, I adore my work. Despite everything, I adore helping others feel human because I love them. Even yet, I would be lying if I claimed it didn't occasionally drag me down, particularly when I get home to my family and find that I'm the only one who finds value in my work. The star is Elena Park, my lane sister. It has always been. She is 32 years old, intelligent, attractive, and has a CV that looks like it belongs in Forbes. She works in fintech, and Luke, her fiancé, calls me Van and drives a Mercedes, as if we've been acquainted for years. At family dinners, we haven't. Everyone focuses on Elena because of her most recent promotion, her taste in wine, and her Pilates routine. Polite questions like, "So, are you still doing that nurse stuff?" are directed at me. Or, "My darling, it must be emotionally taxing." No matter how often I state that I am a caretaker rather than a nurse, it makes no difference. The fact that I'm proud of what I do to them is irrelevant. Years ago, following a failed venture and significant credit card debt, Elena went through a difficult time that I failed to grow out of. I, the kind-hearted one, assisted our grandfather in setting up a trust fund to ensure her financial security in the future. The fact that he appointed me trustee is something that nobody in the family discusses. Said that I was the one at fault. Elena didn't even inquire about its operation. She simply thought I would handle it, and I did. When she relocated to New York, I made sure she always had enough to pay the rent. When she changed jobs, I gave my approval for her graduate school expenses. When she requested a one-time payment to purchase a co-working space, I agreed. She constantly smiled as if she expected it, but she never expressed gratitude. But until this year, I didn't mind. My favorite holiday has always been Thanksgiving. For the ritual, not the food or the formalities. The same awkward jokes from our uncle. The same mismatched meals. Like a memory I could taste. The sweet potato and rosemary scent filled the home. This year, I was more excited about it than usual. There has been a lot of work. The apartment was abnormally quiet after the death of one of my long-term clients. I want sound, laughter, even casual conversation. I thus automatically smiled when my phone buzzed on Monday afternoon and I saw Elena's name. Elena. "Hello, Vanessa. We're trying to keep things formal because Luke's parents are arriving. Perhaps you should start this year." I watched the screen and blinked. Then there was another message. "Elena, nothing is personal. I adore you, you know that. This throng is simply too much for you, not nearly comparable." Holding my phone like it had bitten me, I sat on the bus. Traffic moved around me. Even as the globe continued to whirl, I remained calm. Not quite yet. Only a little. The same feeling I had in high school, when I stood next to Elena at school while wearing hand-me-downs. Pickup. She always had the appearance of someone from a movie. I had the appearance of someone who was just waiting to be cut. I didn't answer. I knew she wouldn't hear it, not because I was at a loss for words. I went to my calendar instead and erased the Thanksgiving reminder. I returned to my job. The bed sheets were changed, prepared Miss S. Addison's soup. When her hands continued to shake, I held her hand. I also opened Elena's trust account portal when I got home that evening. There was still $92,000. Nothing was touched by me. I only gazed. The fragrance of gravy and cinnamon used to permeate Thanksgiving, and my mom's awful cranberry sauce effort. It smelled like microwave pie and warmed pasta this year. Still wearing my scrubs from that morning's half shift, I sat at my kitchen counter. Beside a paper dish, a lone candle glowed. I tried to act like it was still a holiday. No, it wasn't. I spent the most of the evening with my phone facing down. The photographs, the captions, and the never-ending stream of fluent grins, masquerading as friendliness, were all things I didn't want to see. Still, I looked, and there it was. Elena's story on Instagram, picture 1. The table in the dining room, set to perfection, cutlery made of gold, glasses for wine, a wooden board with a roasted turkey that most likely cost more than my monthly food. Picture 2 shows our parents smiling as if it were the cover of a holiday catalog, their arms wrapped around Elena and Luke. Picture 3. Elena in a silk blouse in a selfie. Luke's arm was around her waist as Chin leaned up. "Grateful for those who inspire me to rise higher every day," the caption said. My eyesight became blurry after staring at that line for so long. "Don't bring me up. No seat is left unoccupied. No. Vanessa, you are missed." Within a frame's corner. It was a great evening. Without me, it was arranged flawlessly. What's the worst? Nobody inquired about my location. Not even Mom. Behind me, the microwave beeped. I remained still. I simply sat there and let the meal to cool. I recalled Elena calling me in tears at 2 a.m. last year because she had neglected to pay her rent on time. I approved 3 months of trust fund disbursements without question, and I sent her money before I even inquired about what had transpired or how long she needed to take a mental health leave of absence from her job following her breakup, or when she desired to travel to Bali in order to recover. She stated it would alter her life, so I paid for half the resort and the trip. Nothing changed. She returned the same polished, entitled, and oblivious to the person who enabled her way of life. I turned on my laptop and went to the portal for the trust fund. I didn't do it very often. Only after Elena specifically requested something. She never gave me a sincere thank you. She simply thought it would be taken care of. $92,000 is the remaining balance, which hasn't been touched since her last payout 3 months ago. I moved my cursor over the Access Settings tab, selected a prompt. The screen appeared, and beneficiary access was taken away. The mouse made my fingers tremble. My pulse quickened. From something colder, not from rage. Something more subdued, similar to the tide receding before a storm. I could picture her response, the bewilderment, the indignation. Above all, though, I considered the silence, the kind that, at that dinner table, had encircled my name as if I had never been there. I was not questioned by her. She didn't think I was important, so she didn't ask how I was doing, merely a caregiver. Only the girl in the distance, always silent, always giving. I haven't clicked yet. I shut down the laptop and took a seat. The words came out clearly, though my voice was hardly more than a whisper. The keys are still in my possession, even though I may not be invited to the table. And I didn't hesitate to use them this time. It took me 6 days after Thanksgiving to anticipate the fallout. The first text came to me. "Elena, hey, there is a problem with the account. Have you made a mistake?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The last time she messaged me was to uninvite me from a family dinner. No apologies, no check-in, just right to business. I didn't answer. A minute later, another ping. "Elena, really? Forget it. Can you solve it now? We're on a tight schedule." That was more like her, the mask sliding. She still thought I was simply the quiet little sister with nothing better to do except repair her life. I left the communication unread. I was in the break room at work, enjoying a cup of 2-week tea, folding laundry for one of my customers. I finished it before even glancing at her texts again. That felt fantastic. Then the call came. I did not have to look up the name. The ringtone was familiar. Mom. After the third ring, I responded. Vanessa. Her voice was filled with a gentle intensity that she reserved for situations in which she needed something. Your sister is in a lot of distress. She will be all right, I said softly. The trust account isn't functioning, she stated. The wedding venue requires a payment from her, and it's blocked or something. I murmured as I made my way to the window and observed the dry leaves being strewn all over the walkway by the early December wind. Have you altered it in any way? Mom inquired. I grinned. It was there. That I must have done something wrong. I answered I didn't do anything to it. I just backed off a step. At the time, she was silent. My dear, Elena is in a difficult situation. Would you kindly correct this? Just provide her a hand. You always do. I inhaled. I wasn't a good fit for her world, she remarked. I spoke in a steady tone. All I'm doing is providing her the room she requested. Vanessa, she let out a sigh. Avoid being theatrical. I wasn't being theatrical, so I didn't respond to it. I was telling the truth. I returned to the money management interface for the first time that evening. It had been on my mind all day, weighing all the options. I had no desire for vengeance. I had no intention of ruining Elena. I simply had no desire to carry her any longer. I started a transfer after navigating to the account settings. Transfer trustee responsibilities from me to a law firm I had looked into earlier that week. They had a neutral stance on wealth management, in a professional manner, no sentimental attachments. Not guilty, just rules and regulations. A digital signature appeared on a little form. It was finished with a last click. She would no longer rely on me for personal security. No more demands for funds at the last minute. Not anymore. Assist me. Only this once. No more being pushed to the side and tugging strings behind the scenes. The fund would be administered by the book by the new company, which means that no payments would be made until all necessary paperwork, explanations, and approvals had been completed. This implied that Elena would need to write out some explanations for strangers. My phone buzzed once more the next morning. Elena. What the devil is happening, Vanessa? I recently spoke with the trust business over the phone, and they informed me that you resigned. I must submit a request to obtain my own funds, they added. Take care of this right now. I turned the discussion off. No response, no justification. With that one silent decision, I had already communicated everything I needed to. I wasn't a supporting role in someone else's tale for once. I was the one with the power for once. In the staff lounge, I was in the middle of folding linens when I heard the door open, too quickly. It's too loud. Elena, I said, turning out of habit. Wearing a tailored blazer, she stood there. Her hair was pulled back, as if she were entering a boardroom rather than a care facility, and her heels were too high for the linoleum floor. I could see it as her eyes met mine. Anger masquerading as panic. This has to be fixed. Now, behind her, she snapped. My colleagues peered around corners. Here, we weren't accustomed to drama. In the worst-case scenario, someone spoke louder. Bingo. Calmly, I put down the towels. Why are you here? Everything is being ruined by you. She took a step closer and snarled. Are you even aware of your actions? Our reservation was canceled by the venue. We are unable to send the deposit requested by the caterer. Luke's parents needed to hear my explanation for why we suddenly don't have a budget. Nothing I said was ruined. I just stopped keeping you safe. She blinked. I went on, speaking in a bland tone. To make sure you never had to, I worked 2 jobs. When you weren't looking, I handled your fund and paid your bills. Filled in the spaces to ensure that your idyllic little world remained intact. Her face reddened. I didn't ask you to. No, you simply anticipated that I would. She started to argue but stopped herself. I eventually got the words out of my mouth and took a step closer. I absorbed those words for years. Remember when you referred to me as only a caregiver? I didn't belong at Thanksgiving, you informed me, so I wouldn't fit in with the mood. Her lips clenched. She didn't dispute it. Why didn't you simply express your anger to me? Her voice sounded abruptly quieter, as if the wind had been knocked out of it. Every time I talked, you were already talking. So I looked at her for a long time. The room became silent. Elena lowered her shoulders a little. The armor broke. She muttered, I didn't mean to make you feel small. I didn't recoil. I didn't feel little because of you. With a calm voice, I said, you simply didn't realize how large I already was. We both remained silent for a moment. We remained silent. Not as flawless and imperfect sisters, but as 2 women who are finally able to meet in person. I heard the microwave behind me. Ding! Someone coughed somewhere else. Life went on. I believed I was assisting you. Silently, she said. And I believed you were concerned, I answered. She didn't weep. Elena seldom tears, but I could see that her hands were shaking a little. I will discuss it with the law firm. Her voice was nearly a whisper to herself. You must, I said softly. You won't receive preferential treatment. She gave a nod. For the first time, eyes lowered themselves. She appeared to be navigating the world without any kind of safety net. And I felt lighter, because I had stopped acting as though I hadn't lost anything Not because I had won. She turned to go, stopping at the door. Vanessa. She spoke without turning around. I never intended to cause you harm. I know, I answered. However, you did, she chuckled. And I didn't follow this time. This folding table is incredible. A little warmth and mismatched chairs can help. 2 weeks following the altercation, I threw my own Thanksgiving celebration. My heart is on time, even though it's a little late on the calendar. No expensive wine glasses. No napkins made of silk. Only those who witnessed me, actually noticed me. A homemade apple pie was brought by Mrs. Addison's daughter. One of my co-workers, Darlene, arrived with sweet potatoes and no judgment. James, my neighbor, once came with a laugh that could fill the entire apartment after he fixed my leaking faucet at midnight. In all, there were 7 of us. Some had lost relatives. They had overlooked a few. Some, like me, had just decided not to accept conditional invitations. We had some food, we shared tales, the pie shook from our laughter. I had laid out place cards I had handwritten before supper. Names are printed with care. A silent motion. Something Elena would have deemed excessively sentimental, but it seemed right to me. I sneaked into the kitchen to get more water around the middle of the night. That's when I noticed it. Like an offering, a letter that was leaning against the door of my apartment slid under the mat. Elena's handwriting was that. I looked at it for a while, heart suddenly colder than the air, hands still warm from holding the picture. I took it inside, didn't immediately open it. As the conversation whirled around me, I let it sit next to the bread rolls. Later, when everyone had left and the dishes were soaking in the sink, I opened the envelope while curled up on the couch with my legs tucked under me. Vanessa, my time spent thinking has probably been longer than it has ever been. I mistook image for value. I believed value came from performance and polish. But the reality is, you were giving me more than I ever deserved. You were keeping my universe together. And I didn't even glance at the hands performing the clutching. I apologize. Not only for the supper, for all of it, for being blind, for making you little so I could feel bigger. You deserve more than silence. I hope someday you'll let me try again. Not as someone who needs rescue, but as a sister who wants to see you. I read it twice. Then I folded it gently, placed it at the back of my bookcase. Nor thrown away, nor placed on show, simply kept. Because sometimes closure doesn't arrive in spectacular gestures. It comes in quiet apologies and the choice to hold peace, not power. The next morning, I uploaded a picture. The table remained in its original position. Smudged glasses, empty plates, and napkins folded into little triangles. Nothing glitzy. Just be truthful. Slowly, I typed the caption. Even though I'm only a caretaker, I've provided greater care than most people could. No tags, no hashtags, not necessary. Being noticed by many was never the goal. It was about knowing myself at last, and being known by few. Their table was no longer necessary for me. I had constructed my own,